Hi, welcome to Beyond the Map, a podcast about travel, self-discovery, and the beauty found between destinations. I'm Francesca Page, and each week we'll explore the meaningful moments, mindful rituals, and hidden details that make every journey a little more human. Hi, Chris. Thank you for coming on Beyond the Map. Super excited to have you on. And let's right out the gate, let's talk about you and how did you go from being an explorer and a fisherman to founding a global shark research organization? Like, why OCEARCH?
Well, I think, what kind of happened was the research came first. We started helping scientists get their hands on animals they couldn't get their hands on normally to figure out where they're mating and moving around, and that ended up being great white sharks. And so just became the leader in this space because we were able to give the scientists access to the animal. So after we started getting that going, I was like, oh, wow, we're doing all this really good. We should start a nonprofit to support it. So the work actually came first.
That's interesting. Can you take us actually to a moment at sea? And I'm looking at my notes here because these are questions I really wanted to ask you. When you realized that the work you were doing with OCEARCH could actually change how we understand sharks, and I'm asking actually also from someone who's grown up surfing. I've encountered sharks my entire life, or it's kind of been a quote unquote threat that has been for surfers something that we've dealt with, but you look at sharks in a completely different way.
Well, I just look at them at their ecological role. Right, they are the conductor of the orchestra out there, so they make sure the system tunes toward maximum abundance, which means there's then fish for us. That means the system is operating properly, which means we're going to get all the air and the water we need out of the ocean, which is the vast majority of it. So it was really about making sure we had a solution that operated so our kids could live in an environment that was more abundant than the one we had in the 80s, 90s.
Do you think that OCEARCH has, I mean, I know it has, but has changed people's understanding of how we view sharks? Because I think that, to your point, the ecological perspective of it is something that's kind of been misconstrued, right? Through film, through whatever. Can you talk to me a little bit about that?
So, yeah, we knew when we started this work that we not only had to solve the science questions, but we had to help people understand the lives of the shark and shift the conversation around sharks, because it wasn't going to matter if we knew where they mated, knew where they gave birth, and we knew the few moves to make to bring their numbers back. If people didn't understand why, and the constituency base might not be there to support new management, new regulation, new efforts. So we began to really do something that hadn't been done in science before. We open sourced the whole thing in real time. So people can go to the free Global Shark Tracker up or the Osearch website and track all the white sharks in real time. We're basically pushing content off the ship in real time as it occurs, to really try to make everyone understand, like, this is by everybody, for everybody. It's fishermen coming together with scientists, coming together with educators, coming together with management, because it's going to take us on the end, right? And so it really, I saw an opportunity to make an impact when we first got started, because we were more in the fishing space and we were making big game shows on ESPN, and I wanted to make an impact on the ocean. And that space, even if you're really big in that space, it's just a niche. And when I saw the first trip we took out the guys to catch the white sharks, tag them and release them, is like the first time I saw like a glimmer of light I think there's a path to pivot from fishermen to explorers, and radically expand our capacity to make an impact on the ocean by pioneering research in its most charismatic space. And that was really because of the ship, the vessel, and the practical capacity we had, like the watermen. Because we could put those scientists in a position safely where they could do things they couldn't do anywhere else. So inevitably, you were going to get the ungettable data set. And then that was really going to allow you to lead in that white shark space, which is a massive space with a huge conversation globally around it. And if we were doing that, we could certainly solve the puzzle and communicate to people about like a centrist approach to bringing our oceans back to make sure kids are proud of us.
Yeah, I know. I remember watching you speak years back, and it was such an interesting narrative that, again, the way media has portrayed sharks and how much of an impact that's had. And, again, as a surfer and paddleboarder and someone who's in the water constantly, like I've grown up with that and I handle it. And it's interesting that the media has kind of like moved people's minds when it comes to that. And I understand that completely.
I think it's less with younger people. Those of us that were kind of from the Jaws era seem to be, I think, a little more sensitive about it. But the young people, like, they don't really buy it anymore. It looks ridiculous to them. And now also we actually have the data. Yeah, they love it. It's clickbait. It's clickbait, right? But
Constant. Every time I turn on the news, there's like at least one news stations that like just almost about.
Yeah, here's what happens when we work in an area like off the east coast of the United States, now between Atlantic Canada and Texas and the Gulf. When you start to have these animals with real-time trackers on them and people are tracking them on their phones, they're seeing them come through their beaches and their sounds all the time. And nothing happens, right? So they start to get like, oh, wow, yeah, they're moving around with these things all the time. Nothing's changed. We just know now. And so they start to realize that they're not really interested in them, because if they were, none of us would swim. It'd be like crocs in Australia.
Right. I mean, it's the same with, yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's the way, and I think what's so wonderful about OCEARCH is it's given people the ability to advocate for themselves and look at like, okay, now I know, and an intrigue in sharks. Because I think that's the point, is they've been made out like dinosaurs, I want to say, and they're not.
Well, the big thing is as we see these big sharks come back in the United States of America, right? We're in the midst of the great return to abundance on all of our game feed, fish, and our big predators. It's been going on. It's just really drilled down on the management in the early 90s. And so what's the abundance levels we haven't seen since the 1950s or 60s. So our oceans are back for our kids. It's much better than it was in the 60s, 80s, and 90s. And with that comes the large apex predators. And it's a good thing, right? They're part of the reason that the system is so abundant. They're making sure the seals up north are wiping out all the cod, these stripers and menhaden and lobster. They're preventing that. They pin them on the deep. They don't want to go out. If those white sharks aren't there, all those seals eat 4 times more per day than we want them to.
And that brings me to my next question, Chris. How have you seen over the past decade, right? How have you seen things change when it comes to this?
Well, in the United States, off our eastern seaboard, the relationship with white sharks has changed dramatically. We tagged the first shark in 2012 off Cape Cod. And the second shark ever was a shark named Mary Lee, who just swam down the coast, and the entire eastern seaboard fell in love with her. And that was the beginning of the shifts of undoing everything that Jaws did. People could see that Mary Lee was on their beaches. This is a 4,000-pound, 16-foot plus mature female, and on their phone in real time. And the town started, Mary Lee, come back, don't leave, we love you. They fell in love with her, right? And they started to see, like, instead of every single story you hear is a shark incident and there's only 2 or 3 a year, now there was new articles about Mary Lee cruising through every week and nothing was happening. And so it allowed people to get more context.
Yeah, and it goes back to the same point. Like, again, I grew up surfing. I just knew they were in the water. There was no hatred against them. It was part of, like, I was in their territory. That's how I looked at it, right? Growing up.
Yeah, it's just like a mountain lion in the forest.
Yeah, you're in their world, right? So, appreciate it, understand it. And I love that's what OCEARCH is doing. Walk us through like the day-to-day. You're on the ship now. Like, what happens on a day-to-day basis?
Well, most of the days, you're at a dock and there's ship work going on and guys are fixing things and making sure that the vessel is ready for when it's time to take the scientists out. Because if the ship's not operating and the lift not's operating, there's no science. So that's the real thing that's going on here at OCEARCH, is bringing that practical expertise together with the scientists to lift them up allow them to get data sets they couldn't get before. So a lot of the time it's that. But when we're out at sea, there's about 20 of us on the ship. And it's a dawn to dark operation where the guys will get up and go and put the lines out at first light. The rest of those ship that will start to kind of rustle and wake up after we get those guys fed and get them out because they start fishing right away. And then the rest of the ship will, be prepared to go at any time, but kind of get themselves up and moving. And the day begins. We really start to see activity, it seems like around slack tides. So we'll know what time the slack tides are. If it's coming at 11 a.m. or 7 a.m., it's a different morning. So, but everyone's ready all the time. And then when they catch a fish, they'll bring it back using the contender with hand lines, boat driving, and they'll bring the shark back to the ship, and we'll put the lift over the starboard side of the ship. Then we'll pull that shark up into the lift, pick it up, and we'll put a hose in its mouth, and we'll do 25 research projects on it in 15 minutes. And then we'll drop it back in and let it go, and everyone can start tracking it right away on the global shark tracker.
So how long is the shark aboard the ship?
We could tend to keep it right around 15 minutes.
Wow, that's quick. How many people do you have hands-on at that point?
Oh, the whole shark is surrounded collecting samples for 25 different research projects. So that's the thing that's also really different and why we just published our 104th peer-reviewed paper. And the reason we did that is because, I might only have 4 or 5, 6 scientists on the ship, but they're collecting samples for people who aren't there so that they can get the ungettable data too in their area of expertise. And that's allowed us to just learn a lot more, a lot faster.
Chris, have you ever had any like, I don't know, I want to say close calls out on the water when it comes to the sharks?
Not when it comes to the sharks, no. The most dangerous thing we deal with is weather and the boats coming together and trying to transfer people. The sharks are the most dangerous thing you do.
I watched a YouTube video today of you actually explaining that how the weather has a huge impact on everything. I mean, and as someone, I've lived on a boat before, the weather is everything.
Yeah.
What's been the close call you've had with weather when it comes to
it's just when you it comes up too fast and you can't get someone off a little boat onto the ship and you're getting ready to maybe drive 1,000 miles and you're trying to get them from, a 30-foot boat onto a 130-foot ship and they don't move the same and the wind, that's just sketchy.
So the weather's more of a worry than the sharks are, essentially.
Yeah, I think so. We've led 48 expeditions around the world. So, our theme is, if we get caught by weather like that, we're not doing our job right. We should have seen that weather coming, and we should have been out of there a few hours or half a day before it fell. As we get older and wiser, we have less and less of those issues. Like, we don't even really like to use the lift if it's over 3 feet. So
do you feel like
kind of fair weather shark fishermen?
And in terms of technology, has that adapted over the past decade? Have you had
not very much. It's kind of shocking. There's obviously they add on new little cameras and things like that and battery, but the long-term technology of tracking them has been around since we began because, there are these kind of bulletproof tags that, stay underwater for 5 years. And there's not much volume, so it's like there has not been a huge leap forward, unfortunately.
What do you think about shark cages? Like, what are your thoughts on that? Because I've had so many different responses to that, but I'd love to pick your brain on that. Do you think what are your thoughts?
I'm a centrist. I think if you just go by the regulations in your country, if they're legal, do it responsibly. Those people educate people about sharks. People fall in love with sharks. So there's good parts of it. There's bad parts of it where they start to feel like they own the sharks and that, someone comes in to do research and then that they shouldn't touch their sharks. And then they're undermining the very people to try to make sure they have a multi-generational business. So I think if you have the right perspective and you're not just selling the sharks, sell the sharks, you kind of, then, and you're into education and you're into contributing to science and not just kind of faking it. Really doing it. I think, and it's legal, I think it's fine. I'm a real centrist about that sort of stuff.
Yeah, because there's a lot of, especially with social media and such. Like I know I've forgotten her name, but there's that girl who like swims with the sharks. There's very controversial comments like, "Are you just waiting to be eaten?" Like, and I just was interested to.
That's a concerning situation there, right? Because she inspires people to probably try and do that, and they don't have the skills she has or whatever that sixth sense is she has. It's one of those situations where I think, in her heart, she's trying to do good.
Mhm.
Not much will really come from it, but in the meantime, she's got a nice business.
Yeah, what I think I really love about your business essentially is it's contributing and it's got that scientific impact.
Well, we measure in peer-reviewed papers. So
Absolutely.
we just crossed 104 peer-reviewed papers since we began, with us and our collaborators, with the data sets that we enabled, along with the team of scientists collecting them. So it's been great, right? It's like if we bring people together on a common vision, we can get way more done way faster. And if our biggest challenge in the ocean is data deficit and time, let's build enterprises that overcome data deficit and time problems. And that's what OCEARCH is.
Absolutely. Before I get to, because I want to ask what's next for OSearch, what do you think that is still so misunderstood about sharks? And and this is a conversation that I think will continue for a minute, and it's changing as you pointed out. But what do you think is still there that's so misunderstood? And also, what are the obstacles in the way of that? Do you think it's the media or how we're portraying it? Or because again, this year alone, I've seen the media constantly comment on there's been a shark attack, there's been a shark attack, there's been a shark attack. Sharks are attacking and killing people. And I'm worried that that's the, I don't know, the narrative. Okay. Okay.
Most people get it now. Like if we're not seeing a bunch of big white sharks, we're in trouble.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Bottom line, most people understand they're tending the system toward about that's an unnecessary component. The biggest challenge and like the incidents occur is typically when we put ourselves in the wrong spot. So if you're walking out on the beach and you see a bunch of bait in the water, you see game fish crunching on it, birds diving on it, don't go over there. The food chain is colliding. You would not walk in with a level lion on a stalk. That's what you're looking at when you see those big bait balls and all that life. It's really tough also for, in particular, surfers who are specialists of imbalance, because oftentimes we trick the sharks because we somewhat look like a seal, like wetsuit.
I've said that for years.
Job is to take out the weak one. Well, then that group, no matter how fit we are, we're the weak one. And usually that's the young shark that's just figuring it out. Because if that was a big problem, it would be happening all the time.
Yeah, we've got much bigger.
Be worried about.
Well, there's that famous quote, right? That you're more likely to get hit by a car than be in a shark attack. And I do find it interesting, and I've always said this, that over the years, when I see these shark attack situations, it's like there's somebody who willingly knew, granted, sorry, but they willingly knew. Well, I'm glad to hear that. I'm glad to hear that. And I support that. And for the sake of continuing being in the water, I'm like a mermaid when it comes to the water. I'm always in it. I don't even think about it. I'm more afraid to get in my car than I am to get in the water. And I feel like that's the conversation that needs to be had, right?
This was moved in the right direction. And everyone's going to have certain primal fears.
Yeah.
That's understandable. Nobody wants to get eaten by a lion or a bear or anything else. And that's okay. That's kind of what keeps us alive.
Well, it's reestablishing the narrative, which I think OCEARCH has done. Speaking of which, what discoveries about sharks do you think we're closest to right now?
They're baiting in one of the 9 populations.
Yeah, that's what I was looking at this morning as well on YouTube for you, was that seems to be the spearhead of what's going on right now with OCEARCH, right? And where do you think OCEARCH is heading next? Tell us what's in the future for OCEARCH. Okay.
It's going to be a big exhibit, a big lab, a vessel maintenance and workforce training facility, a residence for visiting scientists, vessels operating right out of the back of it, and the public going through the white shark exhibit. So it's coming. We're getting ready to break ground on it. And then the ship is getting ready to go to the shipyard for a big kind of 10-year maintenance update.
Nice.
And then hopefully back out by the end of the year. And then get the expedition full swing started early 2027. In the meantime, though, we're still working off our little bubble tagging sharks down here off of the southeastern United States to do workups on them, as well as with our partner in Cancun Marine Field Station in Mahone Bay, Nova Scotia.
That's really, it's exciting. And again, I've known you for, I think, 10 years now. We haven't spoken in a minute, but it's amazing to see how much progression you've made. And to that end, if people want to learn more about OCEARCH and the shark tagging, which is really exciting, and I think to your point, the youth are getting more involved in this kind of venture, marine biology, all the rest of it, where do they need to go to follow what's going on?
Any OCEARCH still-time conversation, real-time science and education. Let's have some fun. Let's make sure we deliver no shore ground up to our kids.
I love that. I love that. Thank you so much for joining me today. Thanks, Chris. Thanks so much for listening to Beyond the Map. And if today's episode brought a little inspiration to your travels, or just reminded you to slow down and savor the small things, I'd love for you to follow the show and leave a quick review. Until then, keep backing light, living deeply, and discovering the beauty that exists beyond the map.